After 3 quarters, it appeared as if Penn State was going to pull off the biggest upset of the season. But with over 8 minutes left in the fourth, Ohio State started playing like the #2 team that they are. I'm Kendall, joined alongside Gianna and Justin Chevalella. Saturday was a wild game for Penn State, with Clifford throwing for 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and multiple questionable play calls. The Lions held on to the lead by 5 points early into the fourth quarter, and that's when Ohio State kicked things into gear. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. Gianna, I'll start with you. Penn State was so close, and I don't think a lot of people thought that they could win this game, so it was really exciting when they had the lead. And there was a lot of great play by the Lions. Their rushing game was good. Parker Washington came out strong, and Clifford did throw for 3 touchdowns. So what about the interceptions and the turnovers, and what went so wrong for Penn State in the fourth quarter?
So first, let's start off with the first quarter. Clifford threw 2 interceptions. Ohio State was only able to capitalize on 1 of them. Then we move on to the second quarter, and Penn State puts up 14 points. They looked a lot better. Third quarter, not too much action was happening. Then the fourth quarter came. Penn State did not look very hot. They had 1 fumble and 1 interception, Clifford, and Ohio State was able to capitalize on both of those. Penn State did put up 17 points in the fourth quarter, but because of the 4 turnovers Penn State had in the total in the game, Ohio State was able to put up 21 points with those turnovers, costing Penn State the game.
Yeah, well, you talk about those turnovers, and when you really look at it, those aren't necessarily on Sean Clifford. While he didn't have a great game, the offensive play calling for Penn State just continues to run screen passes and dump-offs. And against the defensive line of Ohio State, which included JT Tuimoloau, he just dominated Bryce Effner in that fourth quarter especially, and just all around. The Penn State offensive line really couldn't handle the Ohio State line as it should have, and you could see that athleticism, especially on that last interception that went for the pick 6 from Sean Clifford. That was another dump-off, I believe it was a screenplay to Parker Washington, and it just couldn't get over that line, and you go to the play calling on that, and obviously Sean Clifford wasn't too great, but Katron Allen had a very solid game for the Penn State offense. He ran 12 times for 76 yards, but he only ran on back-to-back plays once the entire game, and when you have a hot hand, you have to keep feeding it, so the play calling for Penn State just fell apart in that fourth quarter, even with the points they put up. And then you go on the defensive side of things, even though the time of possession was very close for the entire game, it didn't feel that way. It almost felt like Ohio State had the ball for a lot longer than Penn State, and that's not how it went. But at the end of it, the fatigue just set in on the defensive side because they had to keep making big play after big play, and they just couldn't make those big plays in the fourth quarter.
Definitely, and this game was no different than previous games in the regard with fans questioning play calls. And when you're facing an Ohio State defense, do you think that Franklin was too aggressive or overly confident, especially when going for fourth downs multiple times during this game?
They were definitely questionable decisions from James Franklin, going for it 4 times over the course of the game. And the biggest one is the one that didn't convert, the one they did not get the first down off of. So hindsight's 20/20. But there was 3 points on the board there. It was the first drive of the third quarter, and rather than kicking it with Jake Pinniger, who ended up making a 44-yarder in the fourth quarter, James Franklin elected to run the ball with Nicholas Singleton, who didn't have his best game, and it just got stopped by that Ohio State defensive line that we already talked about. And really, when you look at it, aggression's needed in these big games, but you cannot leave points on the board, especially to start a quarter, and that's exactly what James Franklin did. There's a reason that James Franklin is 2-15 against top 10 opponents in his career, and play calls like that are one of the reasons. And obviously on the other side, Ryan Day knows how to make adjustments. He had himself a day against Penn State on Saturday, and James Franklin never made the adjustment to the adjustment, and quite frankly, that's why Penn State lost this game.
Yeah, Justin, you make some great points, but I'm going to side with Franklin on this. I think that Franklin did exactly what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to be aggressive. He said he was going to take risks, and that is exactly what he did. Penn State was 3-4 in their fourth down efficiency, which is really good for Penn State. Like, they were successful in that side of it. So I'm going to have to agree with Todd Blackledge. On Saturday night, he said during the Michigan versus Michigan State game. Michigan was kicking a lot of field goals. He said to beat Ohio State for Michigan, you can't win games kicking field goals. You have to score the touchdowns, which I think that was Franklin's approach on Saturday, and that's how we have to. Penn State has to beat top 5 teams and be successful.
Yeah, and Penn State losing to 2 top 5 teams now brings them to 6-2 on the season. So what do you guys think lies ahead for this team, and what changes need to be made this season to prepare for the future and even looking into next year at this point?
So Penn State right now, they have 6 wins. They qualify for a bowl game. If they have a successful season and their record is 10-2, they will qualify for a New Year's Six bowl game, which is most likely going to be the Orange Bowl game. But I think for the future of Penn State football, there's 2 scenarios for the rest of the season. One, Franklin starts Clifford and plays Clifford the entire season, hoping to have a winning record and make a big bowl game. The second scenario is put Drew Aller in and get him some experience to focus on the next season, forget about this season, prepare him for the future, what Penn State can be next year. I think that Penn State should go 50-50 with the playing time the rest of the season. Clifford starts. If Clifford's not playing well, they will put in Drew, get him on the field, get him experience so Penn State can have a better season next year.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you, Gianna, on the 50-50. I think you either have to go all or nothing, and in this case, I think Penn State should go with Drew Aller as their quarterback the rest of the season, and I was the last person that ever thought I'd be saying that. So I think, though, it makes the most sense because a New Year's Six Bowl, it's special. It does still mean something, but with the way bowl games are nowadays, they're not as meaningful, especially with who's going to opt out, who's not. So I think at the end of it, whether you make a New Year's Six Bowl or not, the season could still be successful for Penn State, and I think no matter which quarterback ends up starting the rest of the time, I still think Penn State's going to get one loss going out. I really think it might be against Maryland in 2 weeks, but I think making Drew the starter makes the most sense because it just gets him prepared for next season. It gets those growing pains out of the way this season, which is already lost because you can't win a Big Ten championship. You're not going to the national championship. So it's kind of a lost season in college football where if you can't win it all, it's not as successful. So I think Penn State just should ride Drew Aller the rest of the season. Whether it's wins or losses, it doesn't really matter. And I think with that, James Franklin should really look at switching.
Both valid points, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. That's all we have for this edition of Penn State Sports Night. What does the future of Penn State football look like? After a tough loss and Penn State fans begging for change, will Sean Clifford start against Indiana, or will Coach Franklin let freshman Drew Aller take over the reins? For Gianna and Justin Chevalella, I'm Kendall Skalicki. Thanks for watching and have a great night.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night. We hope you liked that segment.
And we're sure there's other Penn State Sports Night segments that you're going to love as well. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.
And check us out on social media for updates and behind-the-scenes clips and pics. Follow us on Twitter at PSSN and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action.
For all of us here at the Belisari Media Center, we are
Penn State Sports Night.